Continuing in our series and focus on the Green New Scam, it's my pleasure to welcome Gregory Wrightstone to the truth. He is a geologist and a prolific writer. He has written over 200 papers, publications, and commentaries concerning climate change and energy. Gregory, welcome to the truth.
Oh, it's really nice to be on with you. Thank you so much, John. And you know, it things have changed so much just in the last. I guess it's been 6 weeks since the Trump inauguration. We faced those of us in this climate change battle have been facing strong headwinds now for some decades, and now it feels like we not only is the wind at our back, but that wind that's blowing at our back, it almost feels like gale force winds that things are just changing so quickly now. Just people's attitudes, the general perception of and doubting of the climate change experts. It's palpable. Like you can feel it. I see it every day. And I think they greased the skids during COVID, if you will, because during COVID, I think many of your viewers realized maybe for the first time that not only can the experts be wrong, but sometimes the experts have a financial uh, support that they might be somewhat conflicted, and we see this on steroids in the climate change debate.
So, is it your position that the Earth is not warming?
Oh no, it's warming, thankfully. It's been, but the key here is not is it warming? When did the warming start? The warming started more than 300 years ago. That was brought us up to the depths of the coldest part of the last 10,000 years. That was the Little Ice Age. And so we've been warming in fits and starts for more than 300 years, but the first 200 plus years of that all occurred during very low CO2, carbon dioxide levels. And we started adding significant amounts of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, mainly through the burning of fossil fuels in the middle of the 20th century in that post World War II economic boom. And so much of the warming has occurred before we started adding CO2.
The chart that I've looked at from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Weather Agency of the federal government, shows a pretty solid, very gradual rise since the late 1800s, since they've started keeping score. But in the 60s, there and 70s in particular, there's a noticeable uptrend, according to NOAA. Are they lying to us?
Well, no, I'll just correct you a little bit here. If you
Yeah.
look at their data, let's just go from 1900 to today in the 20th century. There were two strong warming trends. One was from 1910 to I think 46. The other uh, began in the late 50s and ended in 1998. And those two, the first of those occurred at very low carbon dioxide levels. The latter occurred at fairly high carbon dioxide levels. In between, we had a 33-year cooling trend, and that occurred just as we started adding prodigious amounts of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. The global temperatures started to fall, and we had 33 years of cooling. All the while, carbon dioxide increased. And if you remember, I was in school at that time in the late 1970s, and so we were looking in hindsight. We're seeing year after year after year after year of cooling. If you were in 1978, and I learned it as a geologist, they were talking very seriously. Might we be going into the next ice age? Because we didn't have the benefit of looking with confidence forward. We'd had all this cooling. And then starting in the late 1970s, it started warming again, which continued through about 1998. And then if you look from 98 on, there was about an 18-year, it was called the pause, where basically temperatures, they went up and down a little bit, but it was basically the same. And so we have to look closely. The key here, though, that chart that you're looking at, it's generally agreed that uh, the global temperatures have increased about 1.2 degrees Celsius since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And this is important because we're being told by the Al Gores and the Greta Thunbergs and John Kerry, the IPCC, all say we dare not allow temperatures to get above 1.5 degrees above that baseline. Well, guess what? We've already warmed 1.2 out of that 1.5 degrees. So, what they're warning you about is a 3/10 of a degree increase Celsius in temperature, or it's going to be game over. The jig is up. We're all going to die. Climate crisis is set in stone. 3/10 of a degree centigrade is what they're warning us about. That's half a degree Fahrenheit. Well, guess what? Between It warms up that much most days between 11 a.m. and noon. And if you're that worried about half a degree Fahrenheit, move 17 miles further north, and your average temperature will be uh, half a degree Fahrenheit less than what it is where you are now.
Well,
It doesn't make sense.
is there a cumulative effect though? If the Earth does, I don't want to get in the camp of Hank Johnson, who suggested that Guam was going to tip over if they put a naval base on the end of it. But and that was before the United States Congress, by the way. From my home great state of Georgia. But if the Earth does start to warm, is there not the potential that it becomes more likely that it will continue to warm as the Earth absorbs the
No,
heat?
no,
That
no.
would be a
That's
fallacy.
That would be a strong fallacy. It would be disinformation. We know that for a few reasons. That number one, there's never been CO2 levels have been at gee, 15 and 20 times as high uh, than they are today, and that never occurred. So CO2 driven warming is not going to do that. Uh, and also, we see that during the other past warming trends, the three warming trends throughout since human civilization arose over several thousand years, those three other warming trends, the Minoan warming trend, the Roman warming trend, and the medieval warming trend, were all warmer than today, and that never occurred there. They were much warmer than today. And the good news is those other warming trends were always associated with a, a blossoming of an increase of the human condition. The human condition improved. Food was bountiful. Life was good. Great empires and civilizations arose during those other very warm periods, and it was the intervening cold periods that were horrific. Each one of the intervening cold periods that went by the name of the Greek Dark Ages, the Dark Ages, and the Little Ice Ages were all associated with crop failure, famine, pestilence, and mass depopulation. It was the cold periods that were horrific. So no, we haven't seen. There will be no runaway warming, and because in addition to that, uh, we will continue increasing CO2. I don't see any way to roll that back, especially with, and I don't want to,
Well,
because here at the
I'm not a scientist, but is CO2, is that inherently bad, as we are
no, it's
led to
never
believe?
good.
Well, that's what I
Oh no,
thought.
no, no,
Don't
no.
trees absorb it and then turn it into
Yeah,
O2?
yeah. I'm executive director of the CO2 Coalition. That's our mantra: is the promotion of that CO2 is hugely beneficial to mankind, to the planet, to the ecosystems, and that's what we're saying. Our unofficial motto here is "We love CO2, and so should you." It's it's equal opportunity benefactor for all kinds of plants. For example, they try to link everything to climate change. One of those recently was that poison ivy will increase because of more CO2 and warming. And you know what? They're probably right, because CO2, just another, it's a bad plant for us, but again, CO2 is equal opportunity plant fertilizer, and poison ivy, along with just about every plant on the face of the planet, will benefit from more CO2, and they are, and we should celebrate that. The greatest benefit likely is in the expansion of crops, agricultural productivity. If you look at in my new book, the title is "A Very Convenient Warming." Is We took a look at the top 8 crops in the world in terms of tonnage, and we find that all 8 of those are breaking records year after year after year after year, and that's a combination of warming, which extends growing seasons, if you will, in the continental United States, growing season has increased by more than 2 weeks. And so that lengthening growing season does a couple
That's a
things.
good
It makes
thing.
it's a really good thing. Um, Killing frosts end earlier in the spring, arrive later in the fall, and it's hugely beneficial. Um, Not only that, if you what John, I don't know if you have many apple orchards or fruit orchards where you are, but what do you fear the most if you've got an apple orchard? It's a late spring killing frost, isn't it? And because of warmer temperatures and longer growing seasons, those are less likely to occur. That'll ruin your year if you've got an apple or pear orchard or a fruit orchard of any
Sure.
type. And then that's turbocharged with increasing carbon dioxide. If you think back to middle school days when you learned about photosynthesis, you probably had a little cup that you put with soil. You probably put a bean in it and you set it on the windowsill. And your teacher, Mrs. Engelbean or whatever her name was, she says, "Okay, we're going to watch." And you observed and you learned that photosynthesis requires water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide. And the more carbon dioxide, the better. And that's why it used to be thought to be a wives' tale that your plants grew better if you talked to them. But there's some basis in fact because if you're talking to them as you're exhaling. Bear in mind the ambient carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere is a little over 400 parts per million. When you breathe out, you're exhaling 40,000 parts per million. And that those little plants, they're going like this. They're doing the dance. They're going, man, give me more CO2. They love it. And if plants had a vote in the matter, they'd be waving their little hands saying, "Give me more CO2. Give me more. Give me more."
So
And that's yeah.
what is it that we see when I look out my window in Atlanta and when I go to LA and visit my son? What is the makeup of the smog that really does kick my butt with my allergies?
Well, that's completely different. It's not CO2. It's a number of different things. It might be sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides. These are all bad things, but the good news is it's much improved from what it was in the 1960s and 70s. You're not old enough to remember that back
Oh, I
that
beg to
far.
differ.
Yeah, well,
I've lapped you, my
and,
friend. I'm old. I'm
well,
older than everybody these days. So, what do you say about people that want electric cars, that want to clean up our rivers, clean up our air? What are your strategies to improve our quality of life and our overall
well,
health?
let's talk about our air and water today are cleaner than they've probably been since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Might even be cleaner than at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And if you just search for EPA and pollution, you can find that the top 8 pollutants are. It goes back to I think 1980. Their chart, all of them declining, and they're almost flatline now because they're about as clean as they can get without radical, extraordinary efforts to remove the last vestiges of whatever those pollutants are. And so we should be very proud of what we've done and continue to do those things. That's a noble goal, but that's the fact of the matter is that we have very clean water, very clean air. I mean, in my home city of Pittsburgh, I'm in Tampa, Florida now, but the waters there, the three rivers, were highly polluted. Now they've got Bassmaster fishing tournaments, and the same is true for the highly polluted Lake Erie that was basically a dead lake, and
Right.
now again they're having fishing tournaments. Just
I
wonderful,
remember in the 70s, the Cuyahoga River actually caught on fire that runs through Cleveland.
right? And it's cleaned up now.
Yeah, I haven't
And
heard of
again,
any
you
more
can fish from the
fires on the
Cuyahoga
water.
River, and so we should celebrate that.
What about
But we should,
straws and plastics in the ocean?
that is it is it's stupid, 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 idiotic. Uh, Back our CO2 coalition is based in Virginia, and the counties there have a 5 cent tax on plastic bags. And what that's done is force everyone to go to paper. And so you get the free paper bags. But what makes, and they're doing it because of the landfill. None of our plastic here gets, it's put in landfills or we ship it across to India or Southeast Asia somewhere where they try and process it and it ends up in the ocean. But the plastic here doesn't end up. We're very safe. And most of our landfill, what is the primary landfill component? Paper products. And believe it or not, the disposable diapers are one of the worst, one of the big items in the landfills, but it's paper products, plastic. If you look at what the thin disposable plastic bags from the stores make up, I've seen it's an incredibly small percentage of the landfill. So what they've done is it's the dirty consequences of these plastic bags that have now forcing everybody to go to paper and fill up our landfills. But plastics are not really a problem.
So,
Gary?
what does possess these people? Al Gore, you mentioned John Kerry, who are the other climaters that
Greta
come?
Thunberg.
Yeah. Why are they pushing this stuff? If you think that it's propaganda and not grounded in truth, and I mean, you've written a wonderful book, Inconvenient Facts, a very convenient warming. I hope it's doing well, but that's a little play on Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth. But in those movies, he did a pretty compelling case for showing how the oceans were rising and as the polar ice caps were melting. Any truth to that?
There's the kernel of truth in it, but he got it wrong. He got what he got wrong was he had a big chart. He was on a step ladder showing that as CO2 rose, so did the temperature. But he got it wrong. There is a strong correlation over hundreds of thousands of years, but it's exactly backwards. The CO2 change, or excuse me, temperature changes first, and CO2 follows. We go into these great 100,000-year cycles of advancing glacials and interglacial warm periods, which we're in right now. The glacial periods were very cold, and cold oceans suck up carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And because of that, as the oceans cooled, CO2 was sucked up and reduced. And you have to look very closely. So the temperature changes first, and then carbon dioxide. He said carbon dioxide was driving temperature, and he has it exactly backwards. And he's wrong about that. He's wrong about so many things. And let's talk about sea level for just one moment. I think you'll find this fascinating. The UN lists 25 or 30 at-risk nations and islands around the world that'll be underwater in a few decades. The most at-risk island they list are the Maldives in the Indian Ocean. And okay, the prime minister of the Maldives is out there with his hands out wanting climate reparations because they're going to be underwater. Are they really? Let's take a look. 15,000 years ago, the Maldives were also just above sea level, just like they are today. And in the last 15,000 years, sea level has risen 400 feet. Why are the Maldives and all the other islands that they're concerned about not under 400 feet of water? Pretty good question, isn't
I
it?
would think so. Well, and
Yeah.
what response do they have for that?
Well, they don't have a response. They don't want you to know that. That's why people like me have to be silenced. And I will
Yes.
tell you what the answer is most of these are coral atolls, coral islands that are ringed. And so what we have is the coral can grow very quickly. It can keep up with very rapid sea level rise. But how do you get all that up onto the islands? How do you create these islands that are 8, 10, 15 feet above sea level? It's a geologic process known as accretion. And as sea level rises, the coral rises, and it's the sediments, the nearshore sands and gravels that get washed up during storms onto the island, and then the winds distribute it. Critters move things around. It's a slow process, but geology is a slow process. And actually, it's fascinating too to find out as we do research. Approximately 80% of the sands, if you travel around, you see coral islands, the sands there are actually parrotfish poop. The parrotfish actually eat the coral, and most of it's indigestible, so it just passes through the system and it goes in one end and out the other. And so The sand, these are the sands and gravels that get washed up onto the shore. So again, they're telling you, aren't they? Now, right now, sea level is rising at a rate of 7 inches per century. So by 2050, when they say they're going to be underwater, that means we will see another 2 inches of sea level rise. Does that really meet the smell test? I don't think so. What we see here is um, that what they're telling you is that the last 400 feet of sea level rise didn't put those islands underwater, but the next 2 inches will. It doesn't make common sense when you look at it in that way. So they're saying 400 feet, they're still not underwater, but 2 inches more, it's going to be game over for the Maldives.
We're talking to Gregory Wrightstone, author of Inconvenient Facts and A Very Convenient Warming. And we do broadcast in your hometown, Gregory, on WJFG, AM 1480 and 107.5 FM, and WJFA, AM 910 and 98.7 FM in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, we don't have a station that you can listen to us on in Tampa, but maybe you can help us out with that one.
Sure, and I hope you don't hear the. I've got landscapers that just showed up outside my front window.
I
I
do
hope you
hear
don't.
that. I do hear that noise pollution, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry about that. I have no control. I've got crisp uh, sound canceling technology, but apparently uh, it's not loaded onto this yet.
That's okay. I have dogs, and they're frequent visitors on the truth. So, what do we do? I mean, we want to be good stewards of our earth. We want to be responsible citizens. What precautions, what measures do you advocate that we take, or do we just burn fires in our backyard and litter on our streets as long as it's with paper and not worry about this climate stuff?
Well, number one, there is no climate crisis. There just isn't. My first book, Inconvenient Facts, we documented that quite clearly. And in my next book, we've gone well beyond that there is no climate crisis. We're documenting that not only is there not a climate crisis, but that Earth's ecosystems are thriving and prospering. By almost every metric we look at, our ecosystems are thriving and prospering. Deserts are shrinking, forests are expanding, agricultural productivity is expanding. We're growing more food today that's outpacing population growth. Uh, the vegetation from the near polar regions to the equator, every ecological niche, we're seeing great increases in vegetation, and it's because of increasing carbon dioxide. And again, is carbon dioxide, it's a greenhouse gas, yes. It's increasing, yes. It's increasing because we're using fossil fuels, yes. But the fact of the matter is, the warming that it causes is very slight and overwhelmed by the natural forces that have been driving temperatures up and down since the dawn of time. And we can see that looking through just various aspects of temperature in history, where we look at CO2 versus temperature. In fact, in many cases, most cases, it's completely opposite. Or, for example, the last 8,000 years, we've seen a steady increase of CO2, all the while over 8,000 years, we've seen a steady decrease in temperature. And again, we saw in 800,000 year cycles, we see the same thing with temperature changing first, followed by CO2, not CO2 driving temperature. And what we talked about before, the key here, I think that people miss, they don't hear about, are the huge benefits of the past warming periods. For example, the Minoan warm period was the Bronze Age. It was much, much warmer than it is today. During that time, the first great civilizations rose up: the Babylonians, the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Harappan Empire in the Indus River Valley. All of them blossomed, all of them arose, and it was a wonderful time. And then it started getting cold, and it was called. If you don't believe me, just go search your search engine for late Bronze Age collapse. Late Bronze Age collapse, and within 50 or 100 years, it started getting very cold very quickly. crop failure, famine, pestilence, mass depopulation. And that led to the Greek Dark Ages of just a horrifically bad time for humanity.
We had a really smart guy on just last week. In fact, Guy Mitchell. He's written Climate Change, The Great Deception. I don't know if you're familiar with that book or not, but
No.
he observes that 95% of the world's scientists, we are told, believe that global warming is a phenomenon and that we need to be scared about it. He takes a tack very similar to your own and dispels that myth. Yeah, you did say that Al Gore got it that his facts were right, but he got it wrong. That temperature preceded the CO2 increase, which completely dispels the myth that we've been told. So, what is the motivation? Why are they selling us this stuff if it is not proved in science? Never heard that one
Yeah,
before, by the way, Dr. Fauci.
yeah. That's a I I don't know. I've come up with the fact that I can't see inside men's and women's souls to see what their motivation is, and I think there are a lot of motivations. If your salary depends on towing the company line, you're probably going to continue towing the company line. There's a lot of money being made in this. There's some people that actually believe it. Um, I don't know. I've heard all kinds of people, and here at the CO2 Coalition, we like to stick to the science and stay out of the politics. And so what I do, it's our job, my job as a scientist, to say, okay, here's what they're telling you, and here's what the facts are. That's my job. That's my role as a scientist, is to present the facts. No matter, let the chips fall where they may. And we've been saying for years that the truth will win out. And we're finding that's the case now. If they allow people like me and John Mitchell to have our say in the mainstream media, just to get out there with the public, the jig is up for this climate industrial complex. It's going to collapse because people can understand that what I'm saying makes a lot of sense. And we back it up with science, facts, and data. And we will. That's why they will not debate me. They will not debate other climate skeptics because of uh, they can't win because we have the truth on our side.
Well, on this program, we do appreciate that actually, and appreciate you coming on today, Gregory Wrightstone. Where can we get your book, and where can we follow you?
Yeah, the book is the new one is A Very Convenient Warming. Just search for convenient warming, those two words. You'll find it easily. Uh, the CO2 Coalition would be co2coalition.org, co2coalition.org. And we've also got an education component that I'm really proud of. That's co2learningcenter.com. We have educational materials for students. If your grandchild or child is being homeschooled, we provide free materials, lesson plans, and the like. In fact, we have a team at the Missouri in St. Louis right now at the Missouri Homeschooling Convention there. And we'll be traveling around various homeschool conventions starting now through the end of the summer.
Well, we appreciate it, and you do make your points very eloquently and factually, and I appreciate your coming on The Truth today. Come back anytime.
Thank you very much.